Hello and welcome to Ear Seduction. I'm your host, Paul Schilling. Well, I'm back in the hot tub talking with conservatives, decoding their mystical language so that you can understand what a modern conservative thinks and why they think this way. Now, I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to talk about conservatism, but I'm also going to talk about conspiracy theories. Now, in the modern political landscape, political conservatism goes hand in hand with conspiracy theory. And we see a lot of conspiracy theories on both sides of the spectrum. It's ubiquitous on the right and on the left. Now, on the right, it's much more dangerous, obviously, because right-wing conservatism is a call to violence. You've heard me talk about this call to violence in previous episodes. We have people blaming Black Lives Matter protests for the downfall of their downtowns when we have a perfectly reasonable reason to believe that it was COVID that caused so many businesses to flee downtown areas. Now, in some cases, the protests didn't help, but they certainly weren't the reason why these businesses are failing in our downtown areas. And depending on what source you follow, you're going to get a very different story about the current state of your downtown area. But the conservative wants there to be violence in response to things like protests or in response to things like homeless encampments or response to things like drug abuse. And like I said, we talked about that in a previous episode. However, on the left, we see a lot of people engaging in anti-science or science denial and other really stupid conspiracy theories, but they generally don't call for violence against other people. Conspiratorial thinking is ubiquitous, whether you're on the right or on the left, whatever your political affiliation is, but to think conspiratorially is to think conservative. And the psychology is conservative in nature. So today, while we're sitting here in the hot tub, I'm going to recount to you a dinner that I had. This was quite a few years ago. I was meeting with two of my best friends, and we sat down to have dinner with a friend of ours from high school. Now, none of us had seen him in probably 10 years, and he lives pretty far away, and he's one of those friends that we're friends with, but we don't all keep in touch. But he happened to be in town, and he looked us up, and he wanted to see us, so we all went out. And one of my best friends in the whole world, who I'm no longer friends with at all, and it's because of these bizarre conservative conspiracy theories, he was at the dinner. And at this time in my life, the two guys that I went with were my two best friends. I had known them for a very long time, over 20 years. We had all been to each other's weddings, except for me, I'm not married. And I mean, we were tight, really tight. But my one friend, let's call him Jerry. Jerry was going down this rabbit hole of conspiracy theory thinking. And this was well into his conversion from a happy-go-lucky, kill him with kindness kind of socialite to a basement-dwelling, has bottles of propane and water and 10-gallon buckets of beans in his basement under the stairs, Alex Jones listening, chronic masturbator kind of guy. He went from, really the kind of person that everybody likes within 2 seconds of meeting him, big smile on his face, socially very adaptable, to completely antisocial, just poisoned his mind with conspiracy theory. And so it's me, another friend of ours, another best friend of mine, and then Jerry. And we're sitting there and we're waiting for our friend. Our friend, let's call him Boulder. Boulder was coming to meet us at the restaurant. He was coming by himself, and we all came together. It was our guys' night. We had a guys' night for years and years and years, and we were meeting Boulder, and Jerry, he starts in. He always starts in. This is also very conservative. It's not good enough that a conservative believes what they believe, but you have to believe it too, and they have to get adamant about it, and they will not stop. They can't stop. You ask them for grace, and they don't give it to you. So we sit down at the table, and there's some small talk and some niceties, and then he starts in. And he starts talking about the mark of the beast. And I was on a short fuse that night, and I slammed my fist on the table, and I said, Jerry, just one night, please. Can we just have one dinner where we don't do this, where we don't have these discussions about whatever it is you're about to talk about? I said, the mark of the beast. Can we please just have dinner? Boulder's going to be here any minute, and we don't need you ranting and raving like some lunatic, screeching about the mark of the beast. We could just have a nice dinner, talk to Boulder, find out how he's been, and then we can all go home and you can tweet about this or whatever. You can figure out another way to talk about the mark of the beast. And surprisingly, he was kind of reasonable and he said, okay, yeah, sure. And that lasted about 5 seconds. So Boulder shows up, Boulder sits down, and now Jerry starts in again. And he's trying to tell me how FEMA is going to round everybody up into a train and take them to a concentration camp where they're then going to be exterminated. And the way that they're going to determine whether you go on the train to go be exterminated or whether you, I guess, are one of the good people, one of the good ones, the Aryans or whatever it is, one of the Freemasons or whatever group you're allowed to be, you could tell by looking at your driver's license. And your driver's license is where they put the mark of the beast. And if you have the mark of the beast, FEMA's going to come and collect you and you're going on the train and you're going into the concentration camp to be exterminated. And if not, then you're in the clear. I guess then you join a militia or something and then you guys walk around at night with camo on and night vision and patrol neighborhoods or something. I don't know. There so many different things came out of his mouth after, week after week after week. We had this guy's night for 6 years or more. So many bizarre things came out of his mouth. You never knew what Jerry was going to say next. He was completely fucked. His mind was totally fucked on this conspiratorial thinking. He believed literally everything. He totally lost his mind to this conspiracy theory movement, this Alex Jones, Ben Shapiro, this right-wing conspiracy theory crap that goes around, QAnon. He's in the cult. He's a member. And he's going off. And Boulder is sitting there and he's looking at Jerry like, oh, for fuck's sake, what did I get into? And at this point, I'm just letting Jerry go because what am I going to do? I don't want to yell at him. I'm trying to have a civil dinner. We haven't seen Boulder in like 10 years. Boulder's a good guy. He doesn't get into all this crazy shit. I don't know what his politics are. We didn't really get a chance to go over anything about Boulder and how he's living his life because Jerry is just frothing at the mouth, animated. His arms are up in the air. He's pulling out his ID. He's saying, I don't have the mark of the beast on my ID. What about you guys? And he wants us to take out our IDs and show them to him so that he can determine through some numerological, math, quote unquote, definitely not math, but through numerology, he's going to determine the number sequence on my ID and it's going to show the mark of the beast. And I mean, he's adamant. He's like reaching into my back pocket. He's like stood up. He's pulled me forward by my shoulder and he's trying to get into my back fucking pocket. He's like a baby. He's like a little kid who doesn't understand, personal boundaries and social cues. He's off of his fucking rocker and people from other tables are starting to look over. They're like, what is wrong with this guy? And I can't stress this enough. Jerry used to be the kind of guy who was so socially smooth that people were best friends with him after 30 seconds of meeting him. Everybody loved Jerry. Everybody. I've never met anybody like Jerry. Before this losing of his mind to conservative conspiracy theories, Jerry could walk into a room and just, it was like butter. He just made everything better. Everybody liked Jerry. People would just gravitate towards him. And now he is so socially repulsive that in a restaurant, people are like trying to get up and leave just because they're in a table next to ours. So Boulder being a pretty socially savvy guy, and I'm just sitting there like, hanging my head, shaking my head, thinking, Jesus Christ, can we just order dinner, And my other friend, he's not really saying much either, but he's not good at not saying anything. So he's kind of egging Jerry on. He's kind of like, what the fuck are you talking about, you fucking retard? He's like saying things that I probably wouldn't say, but he and Jerry have this sort of special relationship where there doesn't seem to be a lot of boundaries and they kind of get into it with each other and they never seem to get anywhere, but they still go after each other. Good for them. They have a special bond. I'm glad. But I'm looking at Boulder and I'm thinking, hey, Boulder, do you want to go somewhere else? Let's go to the bar. So things calm down for a little bit and Jerry puts away his ID and he stops trying to get other people's IDs. And I say, because I had said to him, he's like, can I see your ID? And I was like, no, I'm not giving you my ID. You're not going to look at my ID and do some weird numerology math to determine if I have the mark of the beast. I said, I don't give a shit if I do have the mark of the beast. I just want to eat steak. We're at a steakhouse. Let's have some steak, and it's like a little kid who's having a tantrum. You're like, oh, let's have some steak. You want steak, don't you? Yeah, you're going to have some steak and I'm going to have some steak and Boulder here, he's going to have steak. And why don't you talk to Boulder? You haven't seen him in so long and you've grown so much since you guys last saw each other. There's a lot to talk about. So I'm trying to get Jerry into let's have a drink and a steak mode. And Boulder starts talking about his life and he starts talking about his job, and it's great. Things do start to sort of calm down a little bit. But because Jerry's conservative and he's obsessed with conspiracy theories, there can't be any peace. There can't be any rest. And we start to crack some jokes, and Boulder is still really uncomfortable, but he's starting to ease up a little bit, and Jerry starts back in. It's probably a half hour later, and now he's talking about flat Earth and the firmament. And he's not saying anything specific, but he's not sure. He keeps saying, I don't know, what if? And I said to him, Jerry, 2 weeks ago, you were talking about lizard people that live underground. Like, when is this going to stop? Can we just have a normal conversation? And he said to me, this was one of my favorite things he's ever said. He said, I'm not really focused on that right now. That's not the focus of what I'm looking into right now. And I said, but lizard people exist still? And he goes, I don't know. And he goes, and they don't live underground, okay? They're from another dimension. And I was like, oh, well, I'm sorry. I misremembered your, dissertation on lizard people that you went over with us 2 weeks ago at Guys Night for 4 hours while we were pulling out our hair just trying to drink a bourbon that I brought. And Boulder is looking at us like, oh, for Christ's sake, is this like this all the time? And I think he even said, you guys have a Guys Night every week? And we said, yeah. And I explained to him, it's been like 6 years. We do this every week. And he goes, is it like this every week? And I said, no, it's gotten like this over the past few years because, I didn't know what to say. And I didn't want to totally throw Jerry under the bus, but Jerry he's throwing himself under the bus. He's like, why are we changing the subject? We've got to talk about the firmament. And if you know anything about what the firmament is and why people think it's the firmament, all these ridiculous beliefs and these moronic conspiracy theories, they all somehow, if you look into them, if you research into them, they all somehow come from fundamentalist Christianity or fundamentalism as it pertains to religion. So they don't necessarily, like if you go watch Ancient Aliens or whatever, they don't necessarily talk about Christianity. They do, for sure they do, but they also try to weave in and intertwine, any other kind of religion that they can come up with. And that's this idea of the firmament and flat earth. In the United States, it's mostly a Christian movement. It's almost entirely a fundamentalist Christian movement, but they try to bring in other elements from other religions, Islam and Judaism, and they try to bring in stuff from Zoroastrianism and, ancient cultures, Mayans and Incas and stuff. They try to do all this stuff to try to give themselves credibility when all they're doing is just describing how stupid they are. And Jerry is just going for it. He's talking to Boulder. Boulder's always been kind of a weirdo, but he's also always been pretty intelligent and pretty scientifically minded. And he doesn't work in the field of science, but he's in technology. It's science adjacent. So there's no fucking way Boulder is going to be like, yeah, the firmament. But Jerry has now become so obsessed and twisted on this conspiracy theory ideology and the whole, fundamentalist Christianity, all of it. He's perverted his mind to such a degree, and he's become so antisocial as a result that he can't even read the room. A guy that used to be able to walk into a room and just become the social focal point, he used to be able to read rooms so well that people would fall in love with him when he entered a room. He can't even sit at a table with 3 people that he knows really well and recognize, okay, 2 of us are just mortified and the other guy is kind of terrified. Like he's starting to think I should probably leave. And that's what Boulder did. I love the way he did it too. Boulder goes, he slurps down the rest of his drink and he goes, I don't feel too good. I think I got the meat sweats. We were at a steakhouse and he came up with the meat sweats. That was his exit. It was brilliant. I laughed when he said it and I still laugh every time I think about it. So Boulder has the meat sweats and he goes, I think I'm just going to go to my hotel room and go to bed. And I kind of looked at Boulder out of the side of my eye and I was like thinking, I didn't say it. I gave him his out. I was thinking though, the meat sweats. I was like, come on, Boulder, you're going to go out on the town. But here's the thing. Jerry's conspiratorial thinking and just the intensity with which he pursues it, and he pursues us, we have to believe it too, is very off-putting. And it's very socially unacceptable. And it makes people incredibly uncomfortable. And because of his now antisocial behavior, this antisocial bend, this fundamentalist Christian bend, which is terribly antisocial, this conspiratorial thinking bend, which is horribly antisocial, he's now unable to read a room. And he takes this discomfort as like people's eyes are being opened up to the truth. He's freeing us from our ignorance. It's really really kind of mind-boggling how ineffective his techniques are and just how horrible he is at recognizing that everybody just wishes he would shut up. So Meat Sweats leaves the table, and we're there. It's just me and my other friend and Jerry, and everybody except for Jerry is just like face palming and going, Jesus Christ, dude, you totally like ran him off. We're never gonna see him again. He's never gonna contact us again. He thinks we're all fucking crazy. We've got one crazed lunatic and then 2 wranglers. We're like your handlers. And Jerry's like, no, man, that's not what he was thinking. And then he asked for my ID again. He wanted to go back into that numerology shit, the mark of the beast. And I said, you know what, I've had enough. And I stood up and I walked out. I went to the staff separately from the table and said, I'd like to pay for my tab. It's separate from those 2 guys. That was my table, but I need to leave right now. So can you please help me? I want to pay my tab. And then I left. I didn't speak to those guys again for weeks because it's just ridiculous. And here's what the conservative breakdown is. A conservative who is frothing at the mouth with these conspiratorial ideas and with their fundamentalism and with their, the just unsupported claims, just wild, erratic claims. Either, Jesus was the son of God, or lizard people live from another dimension and they're controlling our brains. I mean, you pick whichever claim you want. There's this drive within them that everybody has to believe this. They don't have any way to demonstrate it. They don't have any evidence that's convincing. You just have to trust them. And Jerry would engage in this all the time. He'd say, you guys, it's me. Don't you trust me? We've known each other for 20 years. You guys don't believe me? And he's talking about fucking lizard people. That, though, is a hallmark of conservative thought. It's you just have to trust me. I'm not going to demonstrate it to you. You're going to have to take me on faith. You're just going to have to believe it. And this is incredibly socially isolating. This brings all conversation to a halt. This brings all the comfort that you have in a social setting that's provided by the people you're with, and all the little gestures and motions and twinkle of the eye and smiles and body language and small talk and shaking of the hands and the hugging and all of it. All of that brings you in and makes you feel comfortable and socially cohesive. All of that is completely destroyed by this idea that you can make a wild, outlandish claim without any evidence whatsoever to demonstrate that your claim is true, and that everybody has to believe you. They have to believe you on faith. And then if they don't, you're not going to settle down. You're going to get more outlandish and more wild in your gestures and in your voice and in the tone of your voice and the volume of your voice. And it's not just going to be that I want you to believe me. It's going to be, no, you have to believe me. And if you don't believe this, you're assaulting me. You don't trust me. It's now a personal attack on them. And that's incredibly conservative. Every time you go out online and watch an interaction, conservatives often pull this card where it's personal to them. And people like myself, scientifically minded people who want humanity to progress, there is no possible way for anyone to offend me in my scientific belief. You either have the evidence to demonstrate that I'm wrong, and because I have intellectual integrity and intellectual maturity, and I'm an honest person, I will believe you. I will change my mind from the belief I have now to the belief you've demonstrated I should have. And in absence of a demonstration, I already have peer-reviewed evidence that demonstrates that my belief is true. So if I'm believing in the Big Bang and you're trying to tell me God did it, there's no way for you to offend me in that process. You just can't demonstrate the truth of your claim, and that's it. But it doesn't go the other way. That grace that I'm allowed to have because I have a scientific worldview, that doesn't flow in the other direction. The person who's adamant about Jesus Christ, or in the case of Jerry, the firmament and the mark of the beast, if you don't believe them, you've now undermined their entire worldview. And they've demonstrated that they have no dignity, they have no integrity, and they can't back up the soundness of any of their claims. And they take that as a personal attack onto them. You have to not just believe what they say, but you have to believe in them. And if you don't, then you're telling a conservative that they're not even a good person, that they're not even worth considering. And that's how they take it. That's why these ideas and this behavior, this conspiratorial thinking and trying to get people to believe your wild, outlandish claims, that's why it's so antisocial, because of the conservative themselves. They make it a you either are with me or against me situation. There's no win-win here. It's just win-lose. And the conservative always loses unless they get into an echo chamber, right? Unless they're in front of their cult. The conservative always loses, so the conservative always has this lose mentality, and it turns into things like violence. It turns into things like fear. The conservative actually gets upset. They feel attacked. Jerry used to say that all the time. I feel like I'm being attacked. There was no attacking going on. There wasn't even an attacking of his position. There was just a request for evidence, some sort of demonstration that I should believe in the firmament or lizard people or numerology or the mark of the beast. Some reason why I should also believe that FEMA is going to round me up and take me to a concentration camp to be exterminated. But there is no such demonstration. And because there is no such demonstration, now he's saying I've attacked him as a person. I'm going to leave you with that for today's episode. If you're listening to this on YouTube, check out my audio content. There's other stuff there. I want to thank you for listening to the Hot Tub Monologues.